Merry Christmas, everyone. We're coming to the end of 2023, and with us today is a special guest. Retired Farmington Municipal Judge Bill Liese has joined us today, going to give us a little bit of the history of the police department, the municipal court, the reasons why municipal court is important to our communities, and the difference that has been made over his 55-year career in service to this city. Hey everyone, Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett, thank you for joining us today for our Christmas edition of the Mayor's Table. This will be the last episode before Christmas 2023 and New Year's 2024. With me today is a very special guest, retired municipal judge Bill Liese.
Yeah.
How are you, Bill?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm a big fan of the show, and it's an honor to be able to sit and meet with you like this today.
Man, I don't remember who thought of the idea or where it came from, but the fact that you're here is very exciting to me as a big fan of you and, of course, your many years of service to this community in so many different capacities. And so I thought having you on the show kind of to finish out 2023, providing maybe some perspective and history and things that you've seen happening in this community all these years would be good for our audience.
Talk about the good old days.
The good old days.
Yes,
That's
sir.
right. Well, I mentioned at the beginning that you are retired municipal judge.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And this is after, how many years have we put together? 55 years of service,
Total
essentially?
55 years with the city, yes. As a police officer for 21 years, 29 years with the municipal court as municipal judge, and then there was a 4-year stretch in between there where I was actually still with the city, alternate municipal judge and regional drug enforcement coordinator.
Okay.
So done a little bit of everything, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. Well, with your experience, I mean, it all kind of fit in line with what you ended up doing for a very long period of time, of course, as judge. But Christmas is coming up, Judge, and I wondered kind of any good memories from your time on PD or as a judge during Christmas time? I know they can be chaotic.
Well, yeah, that's a good point because Christmas time is a special time law enforcement wise because I went to work December the 23rd of 1968. So
we're celebrating an anniversary.
It's anniversary time, yes, sir. And when I first started out on the police department, we didn't have our law enforcement academy going. That didn't start until 1970, I believe it was. So I was grandfathered in. I got all the certifications of basic and advanced patrol and all of those certifications, but that was after the fact. Back in those days, you would do a ride along with a supervisor or a senior officer for a couple of weeks, and then in my case, by New Year's Eve, I was on my own.
Oh, my goodness. I can't even imagine that today.
Yeah.
And how things have changed so much. And, the burden, of course, carried by law enforcement officers, still similar burden, but so much more regulation regarding the law.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, and it's a bad thing, of course. But, it's a necessary element of a law enforcement officer's career is to get properly started, and sometimes learning by experiences is not the best way to do it.
Yeah. What is that? I mean, so 1968, Farmington didn't have its own police academy.
Correct.
In 1970, wasn't it all still in Santa Fe, or did we have our
Correct.
own?
It was. It all started with the Law Enforcement Academy in Santa Fe.
In Santa Fe, okay.
And then in the 80s, sometime, we started the Farmington Police Academy here, and then it graduated into what we have now, which is kind of the joint academy with Farmington PD, Aztec, Bloomfield.
Game and Fish, I think, comes up and uses ours too.
So it's quite a change, that's for sure, from what it was when I first started to when I was on the department and had some part in getting the academy started with the PD, and then after I had left the department, then it went on into the regional type academy.
Yeah. A lot, I imagine, changed. You said 21 years in law enforcement.
Yes.
So we're going 68 to 89.
Right.
Roughly, right?
Correct.
And when you retired from the Farmington Police Department, you were deputy chief?
Yeah, I retired as deputy police chief, worked up through the ranks. My longest tenure was as lieutenant, did patrol lieutenant as well as detective lieutenant. And then made it to captain, where I was administrative captain for a short time, and then the greatest portion of my captain time was as patrol captain.
Okay. Did you ever have aspirations of being a chief?
By the time that I got to the point where I thought I would be able to be or capable of taking on that kind of a role, I really didn't have. I had more aspirations of retiring and doing something else as opposed to continuing in law enforcement.
Yeah. When, and kind of talk about maybe that transition, because municipal judge is a very unique judgeship, so to speak. I mean, you're elected, but it serves specific. It serves the municipal government. It serves the ordinances created by your municipal elected officials, and that's the part that you carry out as judge.
Right.
And, well, I mean, for 29 years, did you ever have any other aspirations of being magistrate, or you always just liked the municipal part of it?
Well, that's a good point, because in that in-between phase from 1989 when I retired, the reason I retired in 1989 was I was appointed magistrate judge to fill a vacated position until the next election. And so I retired from the police department and filled that position for about a year, and then unfortunately didn't get reelected. So, and that was back in the day.
You ran for that election. Okay.
That was back in the day when magistrates had to run county-wide. So you have to put a campaign together from Shiprock to Aztec. It was a lot of work to put together a campaign back then, and looking back on it now, it was a blessing in disguise, because had I maintained the magistrate position, I would have been municipal judge. And municipal judges, I just loved being municipal judge because of the fact that, like you said, we actually are the separate third party of government that's independent from all of the other government, but codependent on one another for finances and personnel wise and everything. But the neat thing about the municipal court is the municipal judge is not just the judge. The municipal judge is the chief administrative officer. The municipal judge is the department head. You interact with all the other city departments, and you compete for the same pot of money every year. And it was stuff that I was familiar with doing as a police officer, and not as a police officer, but as a police administrator. And so I felt like that was the right fit for me to do at the time.
Sure.
And I just totally enjoyed it.
Well, I think that book of experience that you had in serving, the municipal government for all those years prior to would make it, I'm going to say comfortable, but I mean, you're always in that situation. You're an expert. I mean, if you've been a police officer for 21 years and you've worked your way up, so you understand every different level of policing.
Yeah.
It also lends to, the understanding of the elements that you're dealing with out there, and the individuals and the crimes that are being committed that fall within, the purview of municipal court. which I would imagine you've made a number of relationships with folks who would show up in your courtroom on
Oh,
a
yeah.
regular basis,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and it makes, and I, knowing you, Judge, for the years I have, I see you as a person who you have very kind eyes and a very big heart, and somebody who cares about humanity.
Mhm.
And when you're dealing with individuals and within municipal ordinances, you have to have that kind of outlook. The world's a tough place in and of
Right.
itself, and
It's true.
having a judge who has a good balance and understanding of both sides of the issues and how the law is meant to be applied, I think is really critical. So
And that's a good point. But it's a lot of times people think of a judge as the guy that imposes the fines or imposes the jail sentences, and that's about it. But I always considered it success or failure on the repeat offenders. How do you prevent people from repeating what they've done in the past, and how can you make them a better, more productive member of our community? And always take that to heart, And I kind of had an advantage growing up. I grew up on a farm not that far from here, up in Ignacio, Colorado, in that area. Graduated from Ignacio, and growing up where I did and when I did, was very familiar with minority groups, especially when I was in the 5th grade going into the 6th grade. Ignacio became a boarding school for the Navajos.
Okay.
And from my 5th to the 6th grade, more than doubled the size of our classes because we had the Navajo kids join us.
sure.
And the neat thing is you get to know them and get to know their culture. You get to know the Utes, the Hispanics, all of those. And they give you a little better background of, especially when I moved down here, I could understand the Navajo culture a whole lot better than someone from another state or
Sure.
somewhere else.
In your experience and in your network of other municipal judges that you've interacted with
Mhm.
over the years, how many of those have been former law enforcement? Is it a big portion of judges?
Yeah, the magistrate and municipal judges, the main source of those positions come from retired or former law enforcement
Okay.
officers. Yeah, mainly because they are lay positions. You don't have to have a law degree. It helps
Sure.
to have that, but
Sure.
police officers in general have to know the law, how to apply the law, and like you said before, you have to know people. You have to know people's motives and the reasons why and when they do stuff and that kind
Right.
of thing.
We had former Mayor Bill Stanley was
Mhm.
part-time judge with you for a number of years, and
Yeah.
and now in your retirement, we have Judge Robert Miller, who's now become our new municipal judge. He just won his recent election,
Yes.
and Gary Frey is or Fry
Right.
is
Mhm.
our part-time municipal judge. He also won his election, so
Correct.
kind of a shifting of the guard, so to speak,
Mhm.
for an individual who's been there for 29 years. Who did you replace when you came in as municipal judge?
When I ran for judge, there was a lady by the name of Johnny Bird who was retiring as municipal judge. She had completed 2 terms as municipal judge, and prior to that, if I remember right, 20-some years with the city, everything from being the city clerk to the court administrator, court clerk.
I've met Johnny, and that's
Oh, is it?
interesting. Yes, my time as an insurance. Well, when I had my own insurance agency, I had talked to Johnny a couple times, and I recall her telling me that now.
Yeah. And the real motivation behind me becoming a judge was the predecessor to Judge Bird, who was Judge Roy Markham. Judge Roy Markham and I were best of friends. We fished together and went and drank coffee together, and he encouraged me probably 8 or 10 years before I retired from the police department to think about pursuing the judgeship.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we did it.
Mentors are very important.
Absolutely.
And I know you've taken that responsibility very seriously, and you've mentored a now judge.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've enjoyed my mentors in my life, and I hope to continue to pass that on. It's important to find somebody you connect with who can kind of give you some of that world experience and knowledge and know-how and encourage you in those ways.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things that I've truly enjoyed about being a municipal judge is within the Municipal Judges Association of New Mexico, we are assigned mentor judgeships with new judges.
Okay.
I've done probably close to 15 new judges, mentored them for a year. And the neat thing is getting to do judges like Judge Miller and Judge Stanley and to watch them not become a clone of me, but become their own judge.
Sure. Well, I imagine, Judge, over the years, you've served late 60s, all the 70s and 80s in law enforcement, and then to get to sit on the other side of the bench and be able to see law enforcement as it came through the 90s and 2000s. And what to you has been the biggest change, maybe good or the most challenging components of law enforcement in general?
Yeah. Law enforcement has changed, I want to say, for the better over the years because it's because of the training that's available, and for us, a big change occurred when I first hired in 1968. We were working 6 days a week. We worked shift work, no overtime, very limited vacation time, and for a whopping $450 a month.
Wow.
And
you remember how many police officers were on the force at that time?
I can't remember exactly, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 10, 20, 30, 40, somewhere around 50 probably,
Okay.
somewhere around there. And there wasn't that many police officers around. And,
Right.
And the neat thing, though, with the advantage to that was, we became a family.
Sure.
When I first hired on, I was fresh out of the Navy and served a tour in Vietnam, and it was. I'm going to tell you, it wasn't hard to find work, and I came down to Farmington from Durango. I was interested in oil field work because that's where the money was.
It was exploding at that time.
Yeah. Yes, and my aunt told me, who lived down here at the time, to go up to the city and talk to their personnel guy, who was Raymond Barlow, who was personnel director. And he filled out an application, and he looked at my application, and he says, "You need to put in for the police department." And that's how I got started. I filled out an application one day. A couple days later, I did the written test. A couple days later, had an interview, and then within a week, I was in uniform.
Was there any PT tests back then?
No, not a bit.
Wow.
No, and back then the department mainly consisted of military veterans. The majority of the department had military background.
Was that similar with the county sheriff's department? You recall?
I don't recall, but yeah, it would have been. Yeah.
Just in general, that was
I think pretty much
a lot of young men coming back from Vietnam.
Correct.
And
yeah,
they had
just seemed like the logical choice to make for a career. And
yeah.
And what has changed since then? I think that's one thing that has changed, not necessarily to the good, is the family atmosphere of the police department is not what it used to be. It's more of a job or a career now, as opposed to family like we used to be.
Right.
The big advantage is the resources that these officers nowadays have when it comes to training and equipment and support from the governing body even. And that's not like I was referring back to when I started working 6 days a week, no overtime. And all that changed in the 1974, as a matter of fact, when when the city of Farmington went through a time when we had the Navajos were, and rightfully so, organized and was protesting the way they were being treated or perceived being treated in Farmington.
Right.
And I say a lot of good came out of that. But during that summer was an eye-opener for everyone.
Trial by fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the good that came out of it, of course, we're still in the process of working on those relationships with the Native Americans and with all minorities.
Sure.
But in general, that was a great eye opener. It was a great benefit to the police department because when the city recognized the fact that we worked endlessly without overtime, without extra pay, we worked 12 on and 12 off shifts all summer long, no time off, no vacations, no overtime. The city recognized the fact that they needed to modernize our police department a little bit more. And with that, we went to the 410 work day, we got overtime, got pay raises. We actually got more vehicles to drive. Back then, there was just enough cars, police units to service 3 districts and 2 supervisors. Those same cars operated 24 hours a day. So within a year or less, you were driving a vehicle that had 200,000, 300,000 miles.
That's what I was just thinking that had to be 200,000+ miles in 1 year on those vehicles.
Yeah. So a lot has changed for the good from the 70s on.
That's very interesting. That was a very trying time, of course, for regionally speaking, for Farmington and the Navajo Nation and Four Corners in general. And it'd be interesting to do a deeper dive into that.
Yeah.
Into that as a story, because I think we've come a very long way.
Right.
And if you look at now, even the makeup of our police department, the percentage of Native Americans who serve this community in that role has grown tremendously. I mean, even since I was in high school here, it's changed a lot. And we've talked on the show a few times just the general demographic of our community. And
yes,
and I believe it's a great city, and we offer, obviously we offer a safe community. It's a beautiful community, and opportunities for individuals to create a life that they could be proud of. And I think Farmington has that to offer. And I think people recognizing that, all across the region.
You're absolutely right. But talking about what has changed in the community is, I could remember the days when you drive into town, all the way through town, you have dirt medians all the way across town. There are very few green areas, so to speak, and very few parks. We had Brookside Park and a couple others, but that was it. And we didn't have any of the recreation that we have now. Oh, just all kinds of stuff. There's been great improvements to the city.
Yeah, and I think you look at each decade, there's been some component of that that's added on to it because, that's the thing that's valuable, for people here, and I think people in general, is they want to see, that they live in a beautiful place.
Yeah,
and
that quality of life. It's like you said, Farmington, when you look at the map, we're on the way to nowhere. I mean, we're
on an island.
You have to want to go here to be here.
Right.
And so we have to encourage people to come here somehow. And that's slowly taking place, and it's great to see because, for one thing, I love fishing and hunting, but I also love to do my off-road stuff, my Jeep stuff, and this community offers all of that.
I was going to ask you now. I mean, a retirement community has been one of our key strategies in trying to attract folks to this area. We've got 300 days of sunshine.
Yeah.
We've got really mild seasonal weather, so to speak. I mean, towards the end of the summer it gets a little bit hot, and towards the end of winter it gets really cold. But nothing that's, certainly if you go north of us, it's a lot worse in the winter. If you go south of us, it's a lot worse in the summer. As a retiree who's here, was there anything that you see that we could do to help support individuals who've reached that point to say, hey man, I want to, you just mentioned many of those things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
But I'm always interested in learning more.
Yeah. I can't think of what it would be other than And we're developing now even the access to retirement living. And, and that's one big component that we've been lacking in is that central area where retirees can come and not just enjoy the amenities of life, but have the medical facilities
Sure.
and all of that, all the stuff that they need within a close range of them.
No, I agree. I don't think we've reached our potential there at all. We maybe not even scratch the surface of what I think is possible in that regard. And I'm excited about some future developments that are coming along that will help promote that.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so have you enjoyed fishing in retirement?
I love to go fishing, and I have a brother that lives in Durango, so we fish Colorado a lot. And usually in the late fall, we love to fish at Vicita.
Okay.
Because
you troll or?
Actually, we fish from the bank, and we catch a lot of nice rainbows.
Okay.
This time of year, right from the bank. And there's, of course, a secret spot you got to go to where the fishing is the best.
But it's a secret.
As of last week, the lake had frozen over, so it's frozen to the point that you can't fish from the bank, but not frozen enough to where you can go ice fishing.
I was going to ask, do you ice fish too?
I haven't done it yet, but I'm planning to do it. Yes.
Yeah, that would be great.
I'm at the point where I enjoy the cold less and less every year, but it's like you said. The good thing about Farmington is you could go to Colorado and enjoy those winter sports, and come back here and enjoy the milder weather.
Sure. Well, you get into March where you can still ski in Colorado and you can play golf at Pinion here at the same day. Going back a little bit, Judge, just to your time as municipal judge, I think it'd be interesting for people to kind of understand, the types of cases that, obviously the majority of cases that you see, and how many total cases you saw in an average month or year. I mean, it's a big number.
Yeah. We average, and this is roughly speaking, I haven't checked lately, but every year we average over 12,000 cases a year. The majority of those, of course, are your traffic cases, traffic citations. The most serious cases that we hear are the DUIs, DWIs. The most frequent criminal offenses we see are the street inebriate type crimes, possession or consumption of alcohol, shoplifting, trespassing, those kind of things.
Right. And the maximum sentence that a municipal judge can give to somebody is
for misdemeanor crimes. It's
which these all are. These are all
correct.
Misdemeanors, correct?
Everything is misdemeanor crimes.
Okay.
Up to 90 days in jail and or up to a fine of $500. And there's one exception, which is second and third DWIs. The court on those can impose up to 179 days in jail and or maximum fine of $1,000. So most everything is 90 days or less, and then most everything traffic-wise is delineated by ordinance where it's fines and fees.
Okay. DWI has been a big component. I mean, I would just in my time, not even as a counselor, just in general, looking at the awareness that's being brought about drinking and driving. It's a pretty big campaign every year. It's funded, both at the state and national levels. Farmington receives money every year for their DWI enforcement. We have a unique, I say unique because I've been told it's the best alternative sentencing program here specifically for DWIs, correct?
That is correct.
And tell us a little bit about that. I imagine you helped kind of create that program.
That was back in the late 80s, early 90s. Well, I take that back, not in the 80s, but in the early 90s, there was because of the frequency of DWIs in San Juan County, and back then, New Mexico was was at the top of the list for alcohol-related fatalities. And at the top of the list county-wise was San Juan County. So it was only obvious that we had to do something to address the problem. And it was right about that time that I got elected judge, and recognizing the fact through my law enforcement career that what we were doing before wasn't working, we came up with a new idea, a new approach to start the DWI treatment facility. Originally, it was patterned after the Prince George County, Maryland facility, which was an inpatient and in-house facility. No, it wasn't in-house. It was actually just an outpatient treatment facility for DUIs, DWIs. And when I was elected, I knew that we needed to do more than what we were doing with DWIs, not just fines and fees and jail, but to change behavior. How do you change that behavior? And through my research, I've realized that the most successful way to change behavior, criminal behavior, is not just jail, not just fines, but also some accountability on the tail end of anything else you do, whether that's probation, treatment, whatever. So in that light, I strongly suggested we change the purpose of that DWI facility to being a actual inpatient lockup facility for the 28 days. And
is this when they implemented the 28 days?
Correct.
Was that a statewide thing, or was
No.
that just a local?
It was local.
Just local.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was
0.08, you get 28.
right. That was the slogan, I guess you could say, for years from the DWI Solutions Committee was 0.08 will get you 28, and that meaning if you're convicted of a DWI in Farmington, you're going to get the 28-day program. And by and large, that's still the case today. Farmington is the main contributor to defendants at the DWI facility, not just because we're proud of the fact that we put people in jail, put people in treatment, but because of the fact that Farmington is successful in changing these people's lives, changing behavior. That program, I can't remember the statistics right off the top of my head, but it is it's more than double effective than any other program anywhere in the United States.
So reducing recidivism.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. People aren't doing it again.
You're right. Correct.
After they've gone through that program.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the keys are in that program? How is it making that kind of difference? What sets it apart?
I think it's all three of the components combined. The punishment aspect of it, which is combined with the treatment, and then that aftercare with individuals that come through the municipal court. In addition to the 28-day program, I started the probation program for the municipal court.
How long is somebody on probation normally for a first offense?
First offense, it's up to a year.
On probation?
Correct.
Does that include any type of testing for alcohol use? Or
Yes, sir.
I mean, obviously they got to put the breathalyzers in the vehicles.
Yeah. They have to do the interlock for a year, and they're subject, of course, to random testing, as well as monthly. They come in to meet with a probation officer, and they're expected to produce a UA to make sure they've not been drinking. And there is a high degree of accountability that we've woven into our DWI program in the municipal court and at the 28-day program itself.
Excellent.
And that's the big difference, I think, in why our program is much more successful than others. Is, these people aren't just a number. We put faces to the people.
Sure.
And we want them to know that, it's not the end of the world by any means, but we're hoping that we'll never see them again.
No, and I think they need that, that kind of support,
Yeah.
an acknowledgement of, hey, on their part. They have to acknowledge that what they did is wrong, and could, obviously lead to potentially worse outcomes than maybe what it did.
Yeah.
We obviously know of other, terrible circumstances, but outside of that, I mean, do you see that kind of same component working for other violations?
Yeah, it's a good point. Okay.
Because I think it's, it'd be interesting to see. We have obviously a number of individuals who, come back for different reasons.
Right. The real eye-opener that I saw when I first came to work in 1968 was the number of street inebriants that we had in Farmington. And that really hasn't changed over the years. Of course, the faces have changed, but the problem hasn't changed. Back in that day, we had bars almost on every corner, bars and liquor stores everywhere. In addition to that, you could drive up and buy alcohol, didn't even have to get out of your car.
Right.
And so all of that was a serious problem, and luckily, the city's been able to minimize, I guess you could say, the number of liquor establishments.
To some degree.
It's always a work in progress. But the street inebriant issue is I think it's going to be prevalent in our community. But what we need to recognize is, and I think we have with the Joint Intervention Program, where we've joined together with Presbyterian Medical Services, Total Behavioral Health, and the courts, and the criminal justice system, the detention center and all, and in an effort to get these people off the street and get them reintegrated back into their traditional families.
Right.
Because once they reach the point where the law enforcement is seeing them day by day by day, their family has already said, we don't want you.
Right.
Don't want you around if you're going to be drinking and causing problems. So the big hurdle is, number one, to get them sober, get them off the street, and then the next big issue is to get them reintegrated with their family. And the Joint Intervention Program is addressing all of those issues, and it's like everything else. The percentage of success is limited, but yet it's working.
It is working, and nothing ever works as fast as you want it to work. Human beings are very complicated in and of themselves, and the old saying, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But I agree with you on that point. You got to get them sober. Mm-hmm. I really think that's such an important component, is to get them sober and get them in a routine of soberness,
right,
and away from those things that trigger their desire to drink. And I find, and I've had these conversations here recently, a number of students from Piedra Vista High School have come to speak with me about the opioid crisis.
Wow.
And I always go back in those conversations to talk about, from a local government standpoint, the most costly issue we deal with is alcoholism,
right,
and alcohol abuse.
Right.
That has and traditionally, and probably will be, I would think, for a long period of time, because of, while we have, maybe there are less bars on the corner, every convenience store now has become, and I say every, that's not true.
No,
but
you're right.
There's a particular company that literally every store is now a liquor store.
Right.
And when I look at that situation, it concerns me, because as a kid, I walked into a 7-Eleven to buy Skittles and a Slurpee. And as a kid now, you walk into a store and you're confronted by a big poster of marijuana and marijuana products inside and alcohol behind the counter. And for me, looking at society as a whole, that's not really the message we want to be sharing and putting in the front of people's faces every single day.
Yeah.
And as somebody who would be struggling with alcohol abuse, every time you go get gas, now you're confronted by this thing that maybe you're trying to control.
Yeah. Correct.
But it's had a lot of control over you. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it helps those individuals whatsoever. So there is accountability in that. I totally understand that part of it. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a part we play on a greater scale to help assist them in a way, assist society as a whole,
right,
to understand that there's such a big detriment and what happens to the productivity of the place that you live and the place that you work and the family that you're trying to provide for or be a part of when you have literally checked out and you are checking out. And that drives down, in my opinion, drives down the value of society as a whole. And it worries me. I'm really worried about this component. And so many of these things are outside of your and my control. And but I think they're, it's worthwhile conversations to have. And somebody who sat on the bench and had to look these individuals in the eye, who were dealing with these demons, it had to be very difficult at times, knowing there's not more I could do to help you.
And to that end, it's been about 5 years ago now, in addition to using the 20-day program for high risk and high need DWI offenders, second and third offenders, we started the DWI drug court. Now it's called treatment court program. And it's exactly what you're talking about, a way more intense program because of the fact that these people do everything they can to stay sober, but they can't.
Right.
And it's rewarding to see success, especially when they've been addicted for basically all their lives, from teenagers on. It's rewarding to see that success. And those are the 1%ers that you see, and it is disheartening to see those that just can't make that jump, can't make that leap to sobriety for one reason or the other.
Well, breaking an addiction of any kind, whether it's an addiction to food or sugar or alcohol or drugs or all those things are very hard to overcome. And I certainly celebrate individuals who have proven themselves. Discipline is the hardest thing for people to have. You've got to be accountable to yourself.
Right. I
even look at my own habits and things that I do, and I find it easier to try and hold my son accountable to things that I know he wants to, his goals, and I'm there to support it, than I do myself at times. And it's just a weird part of the human mindset, but it's about making those choices, making those right choices when the choices confront you. And for individuals who are in that place where they just can't seem to make that right choice for one thing or another, I just encourage them. Man, it's worth it.
And there are more and more resources available now as far as substance abuse treatment and counseling. But like you said, there's even more accessibility to
that's where
to the addiction.
That's where I think the problem doesn't. We're not helping the problem get better.
I can remember when the big issue was the little individual shooters that they used to sell, and we kind of thought we had hurdled that problem, only to find out that now they're just selling doubles.
They doubled them.
There's just no end to it.
No, and I was one of those people that was on that side of getting rid of the shooters. One of the reasons is they're obviously a huge litter problem. People just drink them and throw them out their windows.
Yes, exactly.
And it was becoming an issue there. But the accessibility of it, you can get rid of a drive-through window at a liquor store, but now every time I go get gasoline or I want to buy a package of gum or a bottle of water, it's right there.
Sad but true.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know how that changes. I really don't. I think the Albuquerque Journal just ran a whole article about the power of the liquor lobby in Santa Fe.
Oh yeah,
and they're powerful.
It's always been a probably the most powerful lobby in Santa Fe over the years has been the liquor industry. Yes,
it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Why did you want to become a judge?
Well,
you had a mentor.
Yeah.
So you had somebody who was kind of telling you this. You look like the guy who could fit this role.
Yeah, Judge Markham was really good to encourage me to take on that task. And then as a police officer over the years, you saw the need there to do more than what's being done now, or what was being done then. And the fact that it seemed like every election time, not so much judges, but politicians run on being tough on crime and being tough on this, being tough on that. But yet nothing changes. And nothing will change until somebody steps up and says, enough is enough, let's do something about it. And I felt like it was the right time to start doing something, especially with DUIs. And, it proved to be true. It was a tough battle to fight. When you're fighting funding, when you're fighting government, when you're fighting defense attorneys, defendants, you feel like you're the only soldier in the war. But by golly, it was worth fighting.
Would you want to be a judge if you were starting now? Would it still be something you would? I would imagine it is, but
that's another really good point. One of the beauties of the municipal courts is they're fairly autonomous. The municipal judge has the opportunity to be involved with their community. Once the finding of guilt or innocence is made, that's black and white. That's pretty black and white. You got to know the law and the procedures, but it's a black and white decision. But once you find someone guilty, then taking into consideration the needs of the community, what are we going to do with this person to make them more productive and less a burden on the city?
Yeah.
And that's the neat thing about the municipal court was we were able to do that. But it seems that there's more and more of a push to make municipal courts less autonomous, I guess you could say.
Well, it's very clear, and I've read, I believe it was straight out of the state Supreme Court book that they're looking at a way to turn municipal court over to magistrate court essentially and have everything dealt with on a city level at the county level, and which my biggest concern, obviously I have a number of concerns, but just the workload in and of itself. I mean, how many 12,000 cases a year that come through municipal court? Your magistrate judges don't have the capability, the staff, they don't have any of the resources necessary to deal with that. So you take a full arm of the judiciary out of work, and you've compounded a problem.
Yes.
Right now, the judges are already facing more than they can handle. Which is unfortunate. I wish people would make better choices so they didn't end up in those situations.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and municipal court judges play a critical role.
Yeah. It seems that there's a move to make courts more accessible and less intrusive on people's lives. But the reality is, most of the time, especially with your traffic citations, the process is a punishment. The fact that you have to go up to 920 Municipal Drive and go into courtroom, and your neighbors might see you walking across the street, that's going to be punishment enough. Well, that's going to go away.
Right.
What is being proposed now is really, really counterintuitive to what we try to accomplish here, especially with the municipal court here.
Yeah, I just don't see how it works.
I don't either.
And I think about it from the level of the state Supreme Court. They're not funding municipal court.
No.
So what is it that really bothers them about municipal court? Because they don't have enough control over municipal court? I mean,
Mayor,
you're retired now. I know you're retired now, but you're respective of the process. I understand it, but I don't know. I question what those motives would be, and I don't think it's supported, honestly, at the municipal level by elected officials.
No. Having seen both sides of the fence, being magistrate for the short time I was and being municipal judge, I can say that the accountability to the administrative office of the courts is the primary concern of a magistrate judge, as opposed to what can I do to make our community better.
Community. Gotcha. Okay. Are there any stereotypes that have been associated with municipal court that you would, all these years on there, you could sit back now and laugh and say, yeah, this is ridiculous. I can't believe people say these kind of things about municipal judges. Is there anything that stands out in your mind?
The worst stereotype, I think, is probably what I call the television judges.
Yeah. The Judge Judy's.
Judge Judy types. That's just such a bogus way of looking at the court system is if that's all you see of a judge is what they do and say on television.
Right.
Now, we have prided ourselves over the years of being accountable to the people, and by that I mean we follow the rules. We go over and above what the Supreme Court expects us to do, but we also try to go over and above what the community expects of us. And I hope the community continues to hold the court at a high level of accountability, because that's what we need. And by that I mean if you're bored some afternoon, go up to municipal court and say, "No, I just want to sit and watch court for a while." It's quite the eye-opener.
Public engagement on that level would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
You know, I would certainly encourage that as well. Same with city council meetings.
Yeah.
Just to see you've elected these folks, or maybe you didn't vote for anybody, but understanding how these, what the issues are and how they're dealt with is really important.
Absolutely.
Instead of trying to portray it in a way. And,
yeah.
I've said this about the city for a long time. It's really important that the city tell its story. Mm-hmm. You have to be open and transparent, but you have to have a voice who's saying this is what's going on, and
yes,
and try and get as much information out there as possible. I think I've mentioned, maybe it was in an article here recently, one of the things I've found most interesting about this elected position is how many people don't know
yes
what's going on.
Exactly.
And there's so much information that's out there that's available.
Uh-huh.
And you literally just have to get on your phone and go to the internet, and you can find anything that you want to know about.
Oh, sure.
But showing up to a meeting is very eye-opening, and maybe
Sure
in most
is.
cases, I would imagine, it's probably less so in court. It's probably much more entertaining in court than it is in a city council meeting. But this is the local government that you are funding, and you are electing people in, and knowing what's happening is really important.
Yes, and like you said, be a part of it, and encourage a newer generation to get engaged with what's going on in our community.
Yeah,
Courts, council, the whole works.
absolutely.
Yeah. That's a big challenge, and I'm glad to turn that over to Judge Miller.
It was time. It was time. Well, sir, I will just tell you, I don't have any other questions for you, but I want to kind of end on this accountability component. As somebody who served at the will of the people for 29 years, thank you.
Well, thank you.
For somebody who served in our military, thank you. You've lived a life that has been dedicated to other people, and there's no term limits when it comes to the judgeship.
Right.
And it speaks a lot about who you are as a human being, that this community would continue to support you all the years they did, and they probably would have supported you in this election as well. But you made a choice, and I hope that it's a choice that adds quality to your life, and you get to go fishing and spend time with your family and travel and do those kind of things. But anything else you want to add before?
No, I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank the council, you, and your predecessors. I've always had a very professional working relationship with all, not just the city elected officials, but city department heads and all. And for the people of Farmington to have put their trust in me for 29 years is just very humbling.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. Well, good job.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And thank you for being here today. And we'll bring you back on sometime. We find some fun subjects to get into, and
You bet.
the best way to fish for trout on
Yeah.
by Cedar Lake.
I don't play golf, so we're going to have to talk fishing and jeeping, okay?
Okay. Well, we thank you for joining us here today. We hope you enjoyed the conversation with retired Municipal Judge Bill Liese, and we hope that you have great plans for this Christmas season and New Year's. God bless you, and thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you bright and early in 2024.